Hi, my name's Rahman. I'm the Managing Director of Global Sky Media, and I'm going to introduce our latest AAM report, Asia Pacific, for the first half of 2022. We looked at 19 eVTOL OEMs across Asia Pacific, 5 countries in particular, which are the leading ones. China, we had 10 eVTOL manufacturers from there. Japan, South Korea, we have 3 each. Australia, 2. And Indonesia, 1. When you look at the background of these companies, 4 come from automobile backgrounds, such as Honda and Hyundai. 3 come from aviation. 6 are pure play eVTOL manufacturers, and the rest are from drone and some interesting ones from racing. The criteria for selecting these OEMs was very important. So first, we had to make sure that they were either Asian headquartered or were backed by an Asian company. And we also had to look at whether or not they were crewed or uncrewed passenger eVTOLs. And they had to have made plans before June 2022 for their models to make sure that it was relevant for the first half of 2022. So for the OEMs, as I mentioned before, we looked at 5 different markets, and we provide for the different models technical specifications. We also look at the development milestones for when different models came out. So for example, half-scale demonstrators, when the release date, the full-scale demonstrators will be flight dates. The progress with certification, which of course varies country to country according to how far along the governments have progressed with it. We also looked at where their funding came from and how much they've been able to raise, as well as the known orders that have been made for their eVTOLs. We also looked at the global partnerships that they've created. In the analysis, and when we compare the different eVTOLs, we look at the engine configuration. So for example, whether or not it's a pure multicopter or whether it's lift and cruise with vectored thrust. We also look at the different kinds of speeds and range that they can attain. So for example, a pure multicopter will necessarily be slower and will have a shorter range, whereas an aircraft that's been created with vectored thrust and fixed wings will see a longer journey time and faster cruising speeds. We also have something called the probability score, which you can read about in the actual report. In the last report, we looked at the state of the industry in different markets in Asia. This time we're taking a very deep dive into the most prominent market, China. And so what we've discovered is that at the minimum, the amount of US dollars 720 million has been invested into the AAM industry. Now that's what we've been able to find out through public sources. We estimate that the actual number is considerably higher than that. In China, the Civil Aviation Authority for China has given great support to the growth of AAM, and they're providing adaptation of certain regulations for low altitude aircraft, and they're getting heavily involved with the OEMs in creating the requirements for certification for airworthiness. One of the things in China, just as you will find in every market, is a talent shortage. Now this is derived from the lack of a mature general aviation market. The initial applications will be, and this is predicted by most of the manufacturers, high value services. So for example, EHang is banking on air tourism, such as the services they're now providing in Asia, Wanda, Scenic Spot, and also for commuting in high-value areas such as Shanghai and Beijing, which mimics what Joby is doing in California. For infrastructure, it's being led by general aviation airports because they have the facilities and the know-how to get this moving. And this is a preliminary step before other real estate and pure play companies start to build vertiports in urban areas. One of the challenging areas for China is, of course, the supply chain. Components simply don't exist. The market is immature and nothing can be achieved at mass production today. But, of course, that's being nurtured. We have more content in the report as well that you should find interesting. We've interviewed quite a number of the Chinese manufacturers so you can get a perspective from their side. We've also looked at some international players, Ampere with their hybrid electric solution and how they can achieve some of the sustainability goals much faster than pure eVTOLs. We've spoken to Volocopter about their air tourism plans for Singapore, initially within the city-state, but then later cross-border to nearby cities. And we've also spoken to Sergio Chikuta of SMG Consulting, who talks about his very well-known AAM reality index, about how different OEMs can achieve commercialization. The last thing we've done is we've put in some factual data by providing a primer for batteries, so you can get your must-know information about batteries being designed for eVTOLs. And we've even gone a step further by interviewing a company in China called Greenpower, which stands for Green Power, that's creating customized batteries for some of the players there. So please go to our site, globalsky.media, to download the report. And you can also follow us on our social media channels, LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks.